Well, hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition. It's week 3 of our Points in the Paint podcast covering WCC Basketball. Dave Flemming, Sean Farnham, our presenting sponsor again this week, our friends at Hell of a Good Dip. We're glad to have them with us for week 3. We got a lot to get to. Herb Sendek, Santa Clara's head coach, is going to join us. We had actually some wild results, some really good games this past weekend in the WCC, some very big games to look forward to coming up this week. We'll let Sean break down what he's seeing. But before we get started, Sean, look, this is not a news podcast. People can get their news from other places. However, you and I are both California natives, and this conference is so embedded here out west in this state. You live in LA. It's hard to put into words what's going on down there right now. And so the conference has been impacted on the basketball side, that tiny sliver of the incredibly devastating story that's happening down there continues to happen. So I thought I'd just let you, this is your neighborhood, your hometown.
Yeah.
I thought I'd let you say a few words about what's going on.
Yeah, it's been a very stressful week. I think that's one word I would use to describe this week, is just extremely stressful. And devastating. Apocalyptic would be another word. So when I did the game Tuesday night in St. Mary's last week, I flew in on Wednesday, could not fly into Burbank because of the fires. My sister was already evacuated from her home in the Altadena, Pasadena area. She's still not back in her home. We do believe her home is fine and still standing. But when I flew back into LAX, the left-hand side as we came in was the Pacific Palisades, and that fire was roaring at that time, and it was all smoke. And on the right-hand side, you looked out, and the Pacific Ocean was orange. And that's the reality of what I returned home to. And subsequently, upon landing, my house was without power for 48 hours. There was a tree that fell down on my neighbor's home, a couple doors down, because of the high winds. Those stories aren't being reported, obviously, because of the sheer devastation of people losing their homes. And I've had multiple friends of mine lose everything that they've ever had in their entire life. Friday night, when the winds changed and the fire started cresting the San Fernando Valley and the top of the hill, out of my daughter's bathroom, I get FaceTimed while I was in Arizona, getting, in Tucson for their game against UCF. She's showing me that out of her bathroom window, you're seeing the flames. And it was incredibly nerve-wracking. We had multiple suitcases on the floor ready to throw stuff in had we had to leave. But my heart breaks for all of those that have really, truly been devastated by this. And subsequently, a big thank you to all the firefighters, and in particular, the air crews that have worked so diligently to try to knock this fire down and start to win that battle. And very hopeful that even with the winds picking back up as we're recording this, even as the winds are picking back up, that hopefully it doesn't spread the fire to create more fires that create more devastation and loss of home and loss of life that we've seen in Southern California. But LA will never be the same from what it was. And we saw it in Lahaina when the fires in Maui. But when you fly over, Dave, and you see what used to be the Pacific Palisades in that area, and you just see it as burnt gray, charcoal gray, it is numbing, to say the least. So my hope is that this week is as bad as it is, that hopefully we're past the worst point of it now, and we get to turn the corner and start moving forward.
Yeah. And look, it's hard to talk hoops. It's hard to do any of this stuff. But I just thought it was important to, because it's not just the two of us; it's everybody in this conference. The thing you and I love about the WCC is there is a true brotherhood of schools, and there's so much connected history. So when one, whether it's Pepperdine, LMU, is hurting, everybody's hurting. And so, look, we are going to talk some hoops tonight. The conference season goes on, but the biggest story by far this year in our state, in the place we love, we call home, is not over yet. So,
Well, I would say this, Dave. Like, I found work to be very therapeutic for me, actually, when I was calling my game on Saturday. I felt really good that I had a certain level of distraction to it. And so with that, my personality as well as anybody. I just got to say, You look marvelous in that 3/4 zip that you have, sir. Did you notice the polo? The WCC hooked us up with some swag.
How did everybody in the conference office know that quarter zip was the way to go for me? Am I that easy to stereotype? Is
Yes.
it that clear? Yeah,
Yes. I
yeah.
mean, if they could have somehow actually got a sweater that was embroidered, I think that probably would have, like a Mr. Rogers type look. That would have probably been the optimal go-to. But the 3/4 zip works great for you, sir.
That's our next move, the WCC cardigan.
With the hell of a good dip logo on the opposite side, so you look like a NASCAR guy. So you have the WCC and then the hell of a good dip on both sides. It'd be great.
Now we're talking. These are this is why we do the podcast, not to talk. That we come up with ideas like this. That's just a winner. Good point by you, by the way, because it is important. All this stuff is going on, and part of why why do you keep playing games? Why do you keep doing what you're doing? Well, for everybody with any involvement, these teams, the families, the fans, the schools, the students, the ability to try in the face of all this stuff to keep some normalcy is really important, I think. So I am glad, we've had 3 women's games, 1 men's game postponed in conference because of the fires. There hasn't been any announcement about when those games are gonna be made up. There really isn't any urgency to make that announcement. And the whole point is, all right, we're doing the best we can. We're gonna try to keep going. We're gonna support everybody we can down there in any way we can and hope that the small things that we do, this podcast, playing the games, broadcasting the games, helps people feel like their normal life. Hard to feel that way these days, but I'm glad you said that. There were some surprising results this last week, weren't there?
I think there was. I think the biggest one for me, and this is going to be like the least shocking, the outcome of the game was probably the least shocking out of all of them, that St. Mary's beat San Diego. But on Tuesday night, I talked about how when I saw LMU play St. Mary's for my first ever college basketball game, and you know this story, Dave, and it was Hank Gathers and Bo Kimball just a couple of weeks before, unfortunately, Hank Gathers passed away. But the final score of the game was 131 to 110. And I said, it might take St. Mary's 2.5 games to get to 110 points. Ha ha ha. Evidently, Randy Bennett got offended by that, I guess, because he comes out the next game and does something that no team in college basketball has done since 2021. No road team has done in the last 18 seasons, and that's average 1.6 plus points per possession. Now, understand that you score a basket every possession, that's 2 points. They scored 103 points in the game, made 15 3-pointers. I'm like, whose offense are we running right now? Like, who is this guy that throws up 103 points on the road against San Diego? But the reason why this is so big for me, Dave, is because I feel, and I said this on Saturday's game that I did in the Big 12 between UCF and Arizona. I said everybody jumped off Arizona's train really early this year when they were 4-5. Now they've won 6 in a row. And now everybody's like, oh, wait, Arizona, they might be as good as we thought they were at the non-con. St. Mary's, when they lost Aiden Mahaney, Joshua Jefferson, like, people started going like, wait, hold on. Mason Ford's gone. Oh, okay, hold on. They're not going to be the same team. They're not going to be as good. All right, well, here we are in conference play. The defense has been elite. The team has been playing with great balance. Their efficiency is off the charts once again. And St. Mary's looks every bit the part of what St. Mary's has looked for a better part of the last 20 years under Randy Bennett, and has positioned themselves, I think, once again, to, by the time we get to March, we're talking about what seed they're going to be and the home color uniform that they get to wear in the NCAA tournament when it's all said and done. I think this team is getting better and better. They're rebounding the ball at a very elite level, as they always do. They wear you out and hit you and make you feel them every single time they set a screen. And look, they have the reigning conference player of the year. People forget about it. Augustus Marshallonis won that award last year. He is playing at an elite level. Mitchell Saxon is back for his 72nd season at St. Mary's. I mean, the funny thing is that this is a true story. So at shoot around, Mitchell came out. I said, "You're still here?" And he starts laughing. And I said, and he goes, "Hey, just remember, if they change that NCAA rule to 5 seasons, I could get another one. I could appeal for it." And I'm like, "You can't. You have to leave after this year. It's like almost not legal for you to continue to play." But he's got 15 points, 12 rebounds over the weekend. The transfer from Arizona is playing really well. Luke Barrett, I think, is the heart and soul of that team. Like, he's the grit, the toughness of that group. And I really like where Randy Bennett's team is right now. I think the Gales are really, really, really well positioned in conference play. Those matchups that we're going to see on the 1st and the 22nd of next month between them and Gonzaga are going to be battles once again. And so while everybody maybe jumped off the St. Mary's train, I think the rest of the nation needs to start jumping back on their train because this team has size, has depth, has production, has elite level experience at the guard position. Really, really playing good basketball.
Yeah, well said. And it's a good transition, I think. We're going to take our first break because when we come back, we're going to talk to Herb Sendek, coach of Santa Clara. Now, we don't have an official. I guess we could do whatever we want.
We can.
We don't have a team of the week. If we had a team of the week on this podcast, Santa Clara would be my team of the week. And we're going to talk to Herb Sendek about it when we come back on Points in the Paint. All right, we're back. It's Points of the Paint. Dave Flemming, Sean Farnham, brought to you by Hell of a Good Dip. And our guest has promised the head coach of the Santa Clara Broncos, 9th year in Santa Clara, Herb Sendek. This is your 31st year as a college head coach, not assistant coach, head coach. Thank you for giving us some time on a we're recording on a Sunday night. Your team had a heck of a good week, didn't it?
We had a good week for sure, and won a miraculous game at the end against Oregon State, and followed up with a good win over USF Saturday.
Dave, I got to correct you, though. You said a heck of a good weekend. I would say it was a hell of a good weekend brought to you by a hell of a good dip. Herb, let me ask you this. Let me ask you this real quick because, college basketball, and we were just talking a little bit about this with St. Mary's in the previous segment. Today's college basketball, there are so many new components. There's so many new parts. There's so many ways to build your team and your roster. You guys have some continuity this year. How important do you think that continuity is to your ability to sustain the level of success and the elevation of this program over the last couple of years?
Well, I think all things being equal, continuity and stability is a good thing, provided that the guys that are staying with you are capable of getting the job done. And we've had some guys who are very talented, very successful, stay with us. And I think that, all things being equal is a tremendous asset. And, that's what you'd ideally like to have happen in your program. However, there's nobody's immune from having to reinvent their roster from one year to the next. Everybody, I think, navigates the springtime the best they can, and continuity one year doesn't necessarily guarantee it the next.
Including sometimes players leave you and then come back, right?
Right, rarely, but fortunately, we have a great story to tell. As you allude to, Dave, with Carlos Stewart, had a tremendous freshman, a brilliant sophomore year with us, left to go home to Baton Rouge, played for LSU for one season, and then returned to us for a senior season, and is coming off an amazing second half performance against USF yesterday.
Coach, I usually equate that to, you're dating a pretty girl. You decide the relationship isn't going the way that you want it to or the direction, and so you leave. You go date somebody else, and you're like, yeah, that first girl, she was a lot better. So you go back to the first one. Did you ever go back to a girl that you ever broke up with and reestablish a relationship?
I tried to. No one would have me back, Once they broke up with me, it was over. And then when I tried to make my comeback, I didn't get very far, Sean. So I didn't have the good fortune that Carlos had. I was out in the cold, understandably so.
Didn't you expect to talk about your dating history when you came on this podcast, Herb?
With you guys, you gotta be prepared for anything and everything. Like I said when we started, I had no idea why you wanted to talk to me, but now I'm finding out.
Your team played so. Everybody, by the way, you referenced the end of the game against Oregon State. Everybody who's listening, watching, who didn't see that game should go. I'm sure YouTube has a recap of the game, the highlights or whatever. Should go. The ending of that game was truly crazy, wasn't it? What was it like to be on the sideline watching those last few seconds in overtime?
Yeah, I mean, it just, you almost go numb. But in all honesty, that game, that ending, is almost a microcosm of our season. That hasn't happened to us just once. And unfortunately, we've been on the other end of 3, maybe 4 of those kinds of endings. And so if you look at our 6 losses, 3 conservatively, and if you want to extend it to like the last 2 minutes, 4 have really been heartbreaking. Woulda, coulda, shoulda, made a free throw here. The other team throwing in a real difficult desperation shot. And finally on Saturday, we had one of those crazy endings go in the win column. But honest to goodness, we've had more crazy endings this season so far than I can remember.
Coach, the WCC's deeper and stronger than it's ever been. The additions of Washington State and Oregon State have added more teams that you see in the top 75, 76 of the net rankings as we're recording this show, 6 of those for the conference right now. What does that mean as far as your ability to go to maybe erase some of that sting that you feel from some of those close losses and give yourselves a legitimate opportunity to see your name pop up on Selection Sunday?
Well, I mean, we're trying to play the most difficult schedule we can, Sean. We scheduled very ambitiously in the non-conference. It's very difficult for us to accomplish that, but we were aggressive, and I think we put together at one point toward the end of the non-conference, it was like top 25 in the country. And then to your point, our conference is extremely competitive. But we want to be a part of that kind of competition. That's what makes you better, and I think our team going through the non-conference schedule with all that we experienced helped us grow. And as we continue to try to stretch our program, improve our brand, our ranking, our chances for postseason, we want to be able to play the best teams. And obviously, when you do that, you're going to take some lumps along the way, but you're also going to provide yourself with the best opportunity for growth.
Talking to Herb Sendek here for another couple minutes. When you talk about best teams in this league for a long time, that's meant the Zags. You got them coming up this week. I know you got a couple games this week, but you'll head up to Spokane. Sean and I were there last year. Speaking of wild endings, that was a crazy one at your place. You guys have played the Zags very tough over the last many years. What are you thinking about as you approach that matchup this week?
Dave, to be completely transparent, we have also played them not very tough. I could certainly recall many opportunities playing them when, probably the best thing is I could have done is get thrown out at the first media timeout. It probably would have saved me a lot of suffering. You know, what an incredible program. Not to dodge your question, I know they're really, really good. Maybe I shouldn't even watch much film on them before we play. But we have a game Thursday, and even before we get to our game Thursday, our primary focus is always the team in the mirror. And even though we were able to win 2 games this weekend, there's a lot of ways we need to be better. We really need to put those 2 games under the microscope and come back to our team with some good feedback, and then just get ready for Thursday's game.
Coach, do you have any superstitions? I mean, you've been doing this for a long time. Sometimes coaches have superstitions. Is there a pregame meal that you like to eat? Nothing?
No, I'm not a superstitious person at all. I really am not.
All right. What kind of music do you like to listen to, Coach?
I have a pretty good bandwidth, but I mean, if you put me, feet to the fire, I'd go classic country.
Okay.
I'd go guys like Johnny Cash, Glenn Campbell, George Strait, Alan Jackson, guys like that.
What about your players? If you put those guys on for your players, are they in?
I've had them listen to a few of those songs while we've been on car rides together, and they usually start out and you know not giving me a chance, not having very high expectations. But when you listen to the Cowboy Rides Away by George Strait, it's hard, awfully hard, despite your best efforts to not like it.
Now, equally though, are you in tune with Leangelo Ball's new rap song that is sweeping the nation? Are you dialed into Leangelo Ball?
No,
No.
no, but I mean, I also, by virtue of the company I keep, do hear quite a few contemporary songs that our players listen to, and I just try to be a good teammate.
It keeps you young. That's how you do this for 31 years and are still good at it like you are.
Yeah, right. If that's what keeps me young, I need to listen to it more often.
Herb, we love catching up with you. Thanks for giving us some time on a Sunday. Good luck this week. We can't wait to see you in person.
Hey, appreciate being with you guys. You're the best, and enjoy your Sunday. Thanks for having me.
Herb Sendek, great head coach of the Santa Clara Broncos. We really appreciate that. And we will come back for our final segment on our Points in the Paint podcast right after this. All right, we're back. Our Points in the Paint podcast, our last segment. Dave Flemming, Sean Farnham. Thanks to Herb Sendek for being with us. Hey, it's funny. Herb, we joked about it before he came on, Sean. He is not known for like being a boisterous personality, but he's an awesome basketball coach. He really is. He's one of the best, just pure coaches in the country. And there is a reason why his players stay around. There is a reason why there's been that continuity because he gets players better. He's got kids to the NBA. He makes you better. He runs a program where it's fun to play and work hard every day. I appreciate Herb Sendek. I do.
I do too. I think he's an underappreciated national coach. And, you look at this conference, guys that have been around for a really, really long time, not just to single a couple out, but obviously Mark Few's been in Spokane forever. Randy's been in St. Mary's forever. That's the #1 winning percentage and the #4 winning percentage in all of college basketball over the last 4 years, both out of the WCC. You look at what Herb's been able to do at Santa Clara. They hadn't had a player drafted in the first round of the NBA draft since Steve Nash, and now they've had two in the last 4 years, 3 years. So, I mean, just a tremendous job, not just by him, but by his staff. He's got a really good staff underneath him. But he's been a guy that has won everywhere. North Carolina State, Arizona State, and Coach James Harden at Arizona State, comes to Santa Clara and now has got the Broncos trending in the right direction and have been trending there over the last couple of years. And I think they're one NCAA tournament appearance away from being like, oh, yeah, Herb Sendek, he's still crushing it. We know it because we see it, Dave, but I think the rest of the country will see it when they get their chance to be in the NCAA tournament. And could happen this year. You think about Power 5 and the WCC, those are the only conferences with multiple teams inside the top 35 in the net. The WCC has the same number of teams in the top 35 of the net as the ACC does. I mean, that's the strength of this conference, and that's what this conference has consistently been able to do, which is why they've sent at least 2 teams in the NCAA tournament for each of the last 5 NCAA tournaments and 10 out of the last 12. There's been other years where they've had 3 teams in the NCAA tournament, and that was in a stretch where BYU was part of the conference, and BYU wasn't one of those 3 teams.
Yeah. Well said. Anyway, I'm glad we had a chance to talk to. I wanted to ask him about Jalen Williams, who you and I saw up close a few years ago in this league, who literally has become one of the very best players in the NBA. Like Jalen
On the best team in the Western Conference.
he is one of the best players in the world. And He went to Santa Clara. He never left Santa Clara. Herb developed him and got him to that point. And he's basically been a star since he showed up in the NBA. He's taken another huge leap forward this year. He's an amazing player.
It really is. I mean, I equate that kind of development and that kind of leadership to like the first time when you met me, and you as this polished professional broadcaster who just, has accomplished so much with the San Francisco Giants and college football, the Masters, all the things that you do. And you took this young, energetic college basketball analyst underneath your wing, and you coached me up as if you were my Herb Sendek. And I appreciate that, Dave Flemming.
I'll never forget getting the matrix of our schedule and calling up whoever our boss was at the time and going, who? Who? It's worked out pretty well for us. I'll speak for myself.
I can't wait to do it again soon. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Me too. Can we, I know we don't have too much time left this week, but can we shout out Pacific? Now,
Yes.
Look, another team that you and I saw many, many years ago when Bob Thomason was the head coach, underrated head coach in the history of West Coast college basketball, won 500 games or something like that. I mean, UOP for a lot of years was a winning, year after year, consistently winning program. We know they've struggled the last few years. They went to Pullman and beat a really good Washington State team in overtime. And Lamar Washington, who started his career at Texas Tech, I believe, right? Started at Texas Tech, has transferred to UOP, scored 40 points, most points a UOP player has scored in years and years. He's the conference player of the week. There is great history in that program. I know they still have a long way to go. They've had an up and down year. It made me smile to think Pacific. That's the biggest win they've had in a long time.
It is. It's a massive victory, and it is one, though, that does impact maybe like the NCAA tournament hopes of Washington State. Now means they've really got to go pick up something maybe unpredictable somewhere else, right? But the performance from Lamar Washington, damn Cooper Flagg, right? I mean, like, Cooper Flagg, why'd you have to go do what you did on Saturday? Because if not, Lamar Washington was the first player since Ben Simmons in college basketball back in 2015 to have 40 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists in a game. Like, I mean, just silly to think about those numbers. Like, of course, Cooper Flagg did what he did against Notre Dame on Saturday, which you could add multiple layers to. But to your point, Dave, like, I think it's really important that when on this podcast in particular, we have talked to some coaches. We're going to get some players on, I promise you. All right. But I think it is important to point out those kind of performances. And, it was a historic performance and one that shows you on any given night in this conference, regardless of what you think or what the public perception may be, on any given night, you could see something crazy happen because there's talent across this entire conference. Pacific goes to the Palouse and win. Like, I've played in the Palouse. Do you know how hard it is to win up there sometimes? Because, like, it's you're in the middle of nowhere. You're like, okay, like, how do I got to start my own engine here in this game. Nobody needed to tell Lamar Washington he needed to start his own engine. He was on fire from the start and had just an unbelievable, historic performance, and good for Pacific to get that win.
3-pointer with 2 seconds left or whatever it was to win the game at overtime. Just
Big time.
Great big-time performance, and we wanted to highlight Lamar because it would be really great for the league for Pacific to take some set. They are proud of their basketball history there in Stockton. They've had a lot of great players over the years. And it's a reminder because, look, the schedule this week is filled with some matchups on paper that look like they could be lopsided. And you're right. Those teams that need to win have to be reminded to take care of business to make the big marquee matchups as big as they possibly can be.
Well, and that's what we've talked about on this podcast over the first couple of episodes is about the opportunity to get quality wins, but you need some separation. So, Dave, as I look at this schedule, and again, you and I, we're not rooting against anybody. I'm just trying to tell you what the real life reality for this conference to get as much shine as it possibly can. Santa Clara cannot come back on Thursday night and lose on the road to Loyola Marymount. Now, clearly, LMU is able to win, is more than capable of winning that game at home. We've already seen them knock off Oregon State. They've got some guys. Will Johnston is a really good shooter. Porter's having a great year for Stan Johnson. But Santa Clara needs to win that game. San Francisco needs to beat Pepperdine. Washington State needs to beat San Diego. And then Oregon State versus Gonzaga at Oregon State. Hopefully it's a really tight game, and whatever happens, happens, because both those teams, are in that top 75, but you want to keep as many teams in the top 75 as you can. And in order for that to happen, you can't afford to have bad losses. And we're in the middle portion of January, and this is the most mentally taxing period of time for a college basketball player, Dave, because you come out, you got non-conference, and you're super excited. You come back from Christmas break or holiday break, and you're like, all right, conference play has begun. You get super excited right up. The juices are flowing early. And then you kind of go through that middle of January to like the middle of February. That's the most mentally taxing part, because once you get to the middle of February, you can smell March. You can smell Las Vegas in the conference tournament. You can smell your opportunity to potentially make an NCAA tournament. But the only way you get there is by being dialed in every single practice, every single game. You can't have letdowns right now if you want to be a team that plays in the NCAA tournament, period. The best teams in the country are going to get there. And I know a lot of onus has been put on SEC, and I saw Joe Lunardi had 11 teams in out of the Big Ten and 8 teams out of the Big 12. I think the 11 in the Big Ten is going to drop a little bit. And I think that's going to open up opportunity for somebody else to elevate up. And the WCC is well positioned to take some bids away from some of those other conferences if they can create the separation that we're talking about.
Okay, final thought for the week before we wrap up. It feels like we haven't talked too much, and it's okay. There's lots in this league to talk about, but this is our third episode, and we haven't spoken a lot about the Zags. And Gonzaga has a very interesting week. You mentioned they go to Corvallis. They've never beaten Oregon State. Now, look, they haven't played in a long time, but they've never beaten Oregon State in their history. Gill Coliseum. I guarantee you, whatever it felt like there for UCLA or Arizona over the last few years, it is going to feel that way on Thursday night. Those kids will be there in big numbers. That place will be rocking. And then they go back home and host a red-hot Santa Clara team on Saturday. That is a tough and important week for the Zags.
It is. And the Zags still are the toast of the conference. And you look at the non-conference scheduling that Mark Few does. He challenged this team, and they took some losses. And again, when they take losses in the non-conference, people start to have a perception of what they are. But as you start to see the way they execute, here's truly who they are. They have one of the best point guards in all of college basketball, period, in Ryan Nembhard. They do. They've got great size and scoring on the interior with EK and Huff combined. Those two guys every single night seemingly are getting up to 30 points combined between the two of them. When they don't, they struggle. This uncharacteristically has been a poor shooting Gonzaga basketball team. That is until this past weekend against Washington State, when they shot almost 50% from three. And Nolan Hickman decided, you know what? I've missed enough shots this year. I'm not going to miss any more, and went 5 of 8 from deep. Hickman's good enough to do that, and I think he's probably going to be the key for them, because Caleb Battle is a scorer, and he's got that scorer's mentality. But Nolan Hickman is the guy that can really stretch the defense and kind of open up the floor a little bit more. I think he has to be that consistent threat from deep. And if that continues to emerge, I think it's going to bode very well for Gonzaga, not just in the WCC, but also in the NCAA tournament, because they're going to go into the tournament and they're going to know that at least 3 of those games that they lost in this non-conference, as Herb was talking about, hey, like we got 3 games we should have won. Gonzaga's going to tell you 3 of those games they lost. They should have won all 3 of them. And I would agree that they should have won all 3 of them. And if they had won all 3 of them, right now they'd probably be in the top 5 nationally. So you're talking maybe at the most 6 possessions away from being a top 5 team in college basketball. That's how thin the margin is, but that's also the expectation that Gonzaga has created for itself with its consistency and what Mark Few's been able to accomplish up there.
Not many years on January 12th, as we're talking tonight. This podcast will be released a couple days from now. Are the Zags a little bit under the radar and maybe starting to pile up some conference wins? That'll change.
Just remember, they were under that radar last year, partner, until they went into Kentucky and they won at Kentucky. And then all of a sudden they're like, hey, maybe they're okay. And then all of a sudden they get to the NCAA tournament and they advance to the second weekend again. And I think that this team is going to be even more well-positioned than that team was a year ago by the time we get to March.
All right. That's it for our week. How do you think we did?
Here's the goals for the week. We got shirts. You got this quarter zip, so we look good. Now I need to feel good on the inside. So the next package that I expect to receive from the WCC better be some hell of a good dip to the Farnham residents this week.
They have our mailing address.
Yes.
They do. They know where to find us. Talk to you in a week.
Sounds good, partner.
All right, that's Points in the Paint for this week. Talk to you soon.